We'll work, we'll cook, we'll serve, just let us in, pleaded the Apache sisters. The Apache sisters, Maria and Alina, grew up in a small, dusty village at the edge of a vast desert. Life there was simple, but it was also hard. Their family had always struggled to make ends meet. Their father had passed away when they were very young, leaving their mother to raise them alone. Their mother was a woman of incredible strength, who worked in the fields from dawn to dusk, while still finding time to cook, clean, and care for her daughters. Maria, the elder sister, had always been protective of Alina, and Alina, in turn, looked up to Maria as both a guide and a friend. From a very young age, they understood that life was not going to hand them opportunities. They had to fight for them. The sisters spent their childhood helping their mother in every way possible. They carried water from the well, tended to the small vegetable patch, and helped in the kitchen whenever they could. Their favorite moments were those when they were allowed to cook. Cooking was more than a chore for them. It was a way to bring joy, a way to feel creative and alive. Their grandmother had taught them the old family recipes, simple dishes, yet full of flavor. These recipes were passed down through generations, and each time they prepared a meal, they felt a connection to their family's past. The sisters often dreamed of one day using these skills to change their lives. Maria, being older, often took on the responsibility of caring for Alina while their mother worked long hours. She would wake up before sunrise to help her sister get ready for the day. They walked together to the well, fetching water in heavy metal buckets. Sometimes they had to walk miles to reach the market to sell vegetables and homemade goods, hoping for enough coins to buy necessities. Even though their life was filled with chores and responsibilities, Maria and Alina found small moments of joy, like sharing a piece of bread, watching the sunset, or laughing at silly stories during the quiet evenings. These moments were small, but they strengthened their bond and fueled their dreams. The sisters had always been curious about the world beyond their village. Sometimes, travelers passing through would share stories of the city, of its lights, its bustling streets, and the opportunities it held. Maria and Alina listened with wide eyes, imagining what it would be like to live in a place where dreams could come true. But with no money and no connections, the city seemed like a distant, unreachable place. Still, the sisters nurtured their hope quietly. Every evening, as they cleaned their small home or cooked for their family, they would talk about the future. "One day, we will go to the city," Maria would say, her eyes shining with determination, "and we will show everyone what we can do." Alina would nod eagerly, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Life in the village was not easy, especially for young girls who wanted more than the life they were born into. Opportunities were rare, and most people were expected to marry young or work in the fields like everyone else. But Maria and Alina were different. They were dreamers, but they were also fighters. They understood that dreams alone were not enough. They had to work hard, learn, and take risks. They started practicing new cooking techniques, experimenting with flavors, and helping their mother manage the household efficiently. Each small success, like baking a perfect bread or cooking a dish that their mother praised, gave them a sense of pride and encouragement. One day, a letter arrived at their home that would change their lives forever. It was an announcement about a prestigious restaurant in the city that was looking for new staff. The sisters could hardly believe their eyes. The opportunity seemed almost magical, as if the universe was giving them a sign. Maria grabbed Alina's hand, her heart racing. "This is it, Alina. This is our chance," she whispered. Alina's eyes filled with tears of hope and fear. They knew it would not be easy. They had no money for travel, no knowledge of city life, and no connections. But the spark of determination in their hearts was stronger than any fear. For days, the sisters prepared for their journey. They packed their few belongings into a small, worn-out suitcase. They carried their grandmother's handwritten recipes, a few sets of clothes, and their courage. Their mother, though worried, blessed them with tears in her eyes. "Work hard, my daughters. Show the world your strength and your heart," she said. Maria and Alina hugged her tightly, promising that they would make her proud. The morning they left, the village seemed to watch them go. They walked with heavy steps but light hearts, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the city. The journey to the city was long and exhausting. They walked miles along dusty roads, sometimes hitching rides on passing carts when they could. They slept under the stars, sharing stories and laughter to keep their spirits high. Even though the journey was hard, it gave them a sense of adventure and courage. Each step brought them closer to their dream. Along the way, they met people who were curious about their journey. Some offered small help, like food or directions, while others simply ignored them. But the sisters did not let anything stop them. They were determined to reach the city no matter what. When they finally arrived, the city was overwhelming. Tall buildings, busy streets, and endless crowds made them feel small and nervous. But they reminded each other of their purpose. "We are here to work, to learn, to show what we can do," Maria said firmly. Alina nodded, holding onto her sister's hand tightly. They made their way to the restaurant, their hearts pounding. As they approached the doors, Maria spoke the words they had practiced over and over. "We'll work, we'll cook, we'll serve. Just let us in." Standing outside the restaurant, the sisters felt a mixture of hope and fear. The city was not like their village. Here, people were busy, impatient, and often indifferent. The manager, a tall man with a sharp look, listened to their plea. He was busy with customers and seemed uninterested in their story. "We don't need any help right now," he said curtly. The sisters' hearts sank, but they did not give up. They knew that rejection was only part of the journey. They smiled politely, thanked him, and left, determined to find another way to prove themselves. Even after their first rejection, the sisters refused to feel defeated. They stayed near the restaurant, observing the staff, learning the rhythm of the kitchen, and noting the dishes being served. They practiced in small ways, helping nearby street vendors and neighbors with cooking whenever they could. Each action was a step toward their goal. They understood that success was not immediate. It had to be earned through patience, persistence, and hard work. As days turned into weeks, the sisters' skills grew sharper and their determination grew stronger. Maria and Alina never complained, never lost hope, and never stopped believing in themselves. Their journey from the quiet village to the overwhelming city had tested them in ways they had never imagined, but it had also strengthened their courage and unity. They were no longer just sisters. They were a team, ready to face the world together. The first part of their story ends here, with the sisters standing at the threshold of opportunity. They are tired, hungry, and slightly afraid, but their hearts are full of hope and determination. Maria and Alina are ready to fight for a chance to work, to cook, and to serve. The city may be intimidating, but the Apache sisters know that they are stronger than any obstacle. Their story is just beginning, and the first step has already been taken. The city was unlike anything Maria and Alina had ever seen. Tall buildings stretched toward the sky, and the streets were crowded with people rushing in all directions. Horse-drawn carts, loud vendors, and the smell of spices and smoke filled the air. The sisters held hands tightly, trying not to feel lost in the chaos. Everything seemed bigger, faster, and more complicated than their quiet village life. Still, they carried with them the hope that had driven them across hundreds of miles. Today, they were determined to find a place in the world where their skills and hard work could be recognized. Their first stop was the restaurant they had come to seek. Standing at its entrance, Maria and Alina rehearsed their words over and over. "We'll work, we'll cook, we'll serve. Just let us in," they said softly to each other, trying to keep their courage high. Taking a deep breath, they stepped forward and addressed the manager. The man looked down at them with a slight frown, his attention divided between customers and the kitchen staff. "We don't have space right now," he said coldly, barely acknowledging their presence. The sisters felt a pang of disappointment, but they refused to leave. Maria turned to the manager with a calm but firm voice. "Sir, we don't need a fancy position, we just want to help. We can clean, cook, serve, anything. Please give us a chance." The manager shook his head, brushing past them without another word. Alina's eyes filled with tears, but Maria squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "We just have to keep trying. Doors may close, but that doesn't mean the end." Outside the restaurant, the sisters sat on the curb, trying to figure out their next step. The city was bustling, and every passerby seemed to be in a hurry. Maria looked around at the shops, the street vendors, and the tiny food stalls tucked in narrow alleys. She noticed that many people worked long hours, yet their work seemed undervalued. This realization only strengthened her determination. If people here are willing to work so hard just to survive, we can show them what dedication really means, she said quietly to Alina. The sisters decided to spend the next few days observing the restaurant. They watched how the staff moved, how the chefs prepared food, and how the waiters served customers. They noted the small details, the timing of the dishes, the way the staff organized ingredients, and even the customers' reactions to the meals. Slowly, they began to understand the rhythm of the restaurant. It was a world of its own, filled with challenges, but also opportunities for those willing to work hard. During this time, they found small ways to help. Maria offered to clean the street outside the restaurant during busy hours, while Alina helped nearby food vendors by carrying ingredients or serving water. The vendors were surprised by their dedication and willingness to help without asking for anything in return. Word spread quickly. People in the neighborhood began talking about the two young sisters who worked tirelessly and never complained. Each act of kindness, each small gesture of hard work, was building their reputation in the city, even if the restaurant manager had not yet noticed them. Days passed, and life in the city began to test them in ways they had not expected. They had little money, sometimes struggling to buy food for themselves. The long walks, the sun beating down on their backs, and the uncertainty of the future made their journey exhausting. There were moments when Alina felt like giving up. "Maria, maybe we should go back home. Maybe the city isn't for us," she said one evening as they rested under a tree. Maria shook her head firmly. "No, Alina, we've come too far to turn back now. We just need patience and courage. Something will happen, you'll see." One afternoon, as fate would have it, the restaurant faced an unexpected challenge. A delivery was late, a few staff members called in sick, and the kitchen became chaotic. The manager was frantic, trying to keep the meals on time. Maria and Alina, who had been watching quietly from the street, saw this as their moment. They approached the entrance, carrying a basket of fresh bread and a small dish of vegetables they had prepared themselves. With polite but confident voices, they asked, "Please let us help. We can cook, clean, serve, anything you need." The manager looked at them suspiciously. He had never seen these girls before, and his first instinct was to say no, but the desperation of the moment made him pause. "Fine," he muttered. "You can help, but don't slow anyone down." Maria and Alina nodded eagerly and entered the kitchen. At first, the staff was doubtful. How could two outsiders, young girls from a village, handle the pressure of a busy city restaurant? But the sisters worked silently, efficiently, and with surprising skill. Maria chopped vegetables with precision, while Alina carefully prepared sauces, following the traditional methods their grandmother had taught them. They cleaned countertops, organized utensils, and even offered to help serve the dishes to the customers. Their hard work and calm demeanor impressed the chefs, who had been expecting mistakes. The customers noticed too. The dishes were served on time, fresh and flavorful, and some even complimented the quality. The manager watched in disbelief, realizing that these young sisters had stepped in during a critical moment and saved the day. After the rush, the manager called Maria and Alina aside. "You handled that well," he said, still looking a little surprised. "I wasn't expecting much, but you proved me wrong." The sisters smiled, feeling a mix of pride and relief. "Thank you, sir," Maria said politely. "We just wanted to help." The manager nodded, and though he didn't offer them a permanent position immediately, he promised to consider them for future openings. For the sisters, this small acknowledgement was a victory, a glimmer of hope that their dreams might actually come true. Even after this success, life was not easy. The sisters had to prove themselves every single day. They spent hours practicing new cooking techniques in the kitchen, learning the names of ingredients and memorizing the sequence of steps for each dish. They learned to handle knives quickly and safely, manage the heat of the stoves, and even communicate politely with customers. Each day brought new challenges, from demanding customers to long hours on their feet, but the sisters never complained. They reminded each other of why they had come to the city in the first place: to work hard, learn, and show the world their value. During their time in the city, Maria and Alina also made friends with some of the other staff. At first, many were skeptical, but they gradually warmed up to the sisters after seeing their dedication. These new friends offered advice, taught them small tricks of the trade, and sometimes shared their own meals. These small gestures made Maria and Alina feel less alone in the big, overwhelming city. They realized that kindness and teamwork were just as important as skill and determination. As the days turned into weeks, the sisters' confidence grew. They had experienced rejection, faced challenges, and worked harder than they ever had before. Each small victory, an impressed chef, a happy customer, or a compliment from the manager, strengthened their resolve. Maria and Alina knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it together. Their bond as sisters, their determination to succeed, and their willingness to work tirelessly were their greatest strengths. By the end of part 2, Maria and Alina had learned an important lesson. Doors do not always open on the first try, but persistence, skill, and heart can create opportunities where none seem to exist. They were no longer just hopeful girls from a village. They were fighters, observers, and learners, ready to take on the challenges of the city. Their journey had begun with rejection, but they had turned it into a chance to prove themselves. And in doing so, they had taken their first real steps toward achieving their dream of working in the prestigious restaurant they had traveled so far to reach. Days turned into weeks, and the Apache sisters, Maria and Alina, slowly adapted to the rhythm of the city and the restaurant. Even though they had been rejected at first, they refused to let that moment define them. Every day, they arrived early in the morning and stayed late, observing the staff, learning the flow of the kitchen, and practicing whenever possible. They were determined to be ready for any opportunity, no matter how small or unexpected. Their hands were rough from chopping vegetables, their feet sore from long hours of walking, and yet their hearts were full of hope. One busy afternoon, the restaurant faced a crisis. Several staff members had called in sick, and the kitchen was understaffed during the lunch rush. Orders piled up, and the waiters hurried nervously between tables. The manager was running from one side of the restaurant to the other, barking instructions and trying to keep the chaos under control. The sisters, who had been quietly watching from outside, noticed the urgency. Their hearts beat faster. This was the chance they had been waiting for. Without hesitation, Maria whispered to Alina, "This is it. We can't wait any longer. We have to show them what we can do." Alina nodded, her hands shaking slightly but her determination unwavering. They approached the entrance and called out politely, "Sir, please let us help. We can cook, serve, clean, anything you need." The manager, already frazzled, barely glanced at them. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, turning away. But the sisters were not discouraged. They waited patiently, watching for an opening. Just then, a chef accidentally dropped a tray of food, causing a loud crash in the kitchen. The manager turned to assess the damage and noticed the sisters standing nearby. For the first time, he truly looked at them, noting the determination in their eyes. With a sigh, he said, "Fine, you can help, but if you slow us down, you're out." Maria and Alina nodded eagerly and followed him into the kitchen, their hearts racing with excitement. Inside, the kitchen was chaotic. Pots boiled over, orders were piling up, and tempers flared. The sisters jumped in immediately, without hesitation. Maria began chopping vegetables with precision, her hands moving quickly and efficiently. Alina worked on sauces and garnishes, carefully following the traditional methods their grandmother had taught them. They cleaned the counters, organized utensils, and even offered to assist the waiters by carrying dishes to the tables. Every action was deliberate, focused, and executed with care. The other kitchen staff watched in disbelief. They had expected these young, inexperienced girls to make mistakes, slow things down, or create more work. But instead, Maria and Alina moved with purpose, their hands steady and their minds alert. The chefs began to relax slightly, noticing that the sisters were not only capable but also reliable under pressure. Their hard work began to make a difference, and slowly the kitchen regained its rhythm. As the lunch rush continued, the sisters' skills caught the attention of the customers as well. The dishes they helped prepare were fresh, well-cooked, and served on time. Customers complimented the quality of the food, praising the presentation and flavor. Some even asked about the young girls who seemed to be helping so efficiently. The manager noticed the positive reactions and felt a growing sense of admiration mixed with surprise. Maria and Alina had turned a near disaster into a successful service, and it did not go unnoticed. After the rush, the manager called the sisters aside. "You did well today," he said, his tone more serious than before. "I wasn't expecting much, but you proved me wrong. You have potential. I can't offer you a full-time position yet, but I will keep an eye on you. If you continue like this, we may have a place for you here." Maria and Alina's faces lit up with joy. Even a small acknowledgement felt like a huge victory. They thanked him politely and promised to continue working hard, understanding that this was only the beginning of their journey. That evening, the sisters returned to their small rented room, exhausted but exhilarated. They sat together on the floor, recounting every detail of the day. "We did it, Alina," Maria said, her eyes shining. "We finally got our chance." Alina smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. "I can't believe it. All our hard work is paying off." They realized that determination, patience, and the willingness to step forward when the moment arrived had made all the difference. Over the next few weeks, Maria and Alina continued to prove themselves. They arrived before sunrise to help prepare ingredients, stayed late to clean the kitchen, and learned every detail about the restaurant's operations. They observed how orders were taken, how ingredients were stored, and how each dish was assembled with care. They learned the importance of timing, precision, and presentation. Each day brought new lessons, and each lesson strengthened their confidence. The sisters also learned to handle challenges with grace. There were moments when mistakes happened. Sometimes a sauce was too salty, or a dish was served a little late. Instead of becoming discouraged, they analyzed what went wrong and worked to correct it. Maria would say, "Mistakes are not failures, they are lessons. We just have to learn from them." Alina would nod, understanding that persistence was as important as talent. Their attitude began to influence others in the kitchen, earning them respect among the staff. During this time, they also made friends with a few kind-hearted employees who had noticed their dedication. These new friends shared tips and small tricks, like how to manage the heat on the stove or how to communicate efficiently with the waiters. The sisters were grateful for this guidance and absorbed every piece of advice. They realized that while skill and determination were essential, learning from others and working as a team was equally important. The sisters, confidence grew as they gained experience. They began suggesting small improvements, like arranging ingredients for faster cooking or adjusting the presentation of dishes to make them more appealing. Their suggestions, though simple, were welcomed by the chefs who had grown to trust them. The sisters understood that success was not just about working hard, it was also about thinking carefully, observing closely, and finding ways to contribute beyond the basic tasks. Despite their progress, life was still challenging. Long hours left them tired, and the cost of living in the city was high. They often shared a single meal after the kitchen closed, eating quietly while discussing the day. But these hardships did not dampen their spirit. Instead, they reminded themselves of their purpose. Maria often said, "Every hour we work brings us closer to our dream. Every challenge makes us stronger." Alina repeated these words to herself, using them as motivation to keep going, even on the toughest days. As weeks turned into months, the sisters' reputation began to grow. Customers began asking about the young women who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Some regulars complimented the restaurant manager on the consistency and quality of the food, unaware that Maria and Alina were largely responsible. The sisters had quietly become an integral part of the kitchen's operations. Their talent, dedication, and teamwork were making a real difference, and slowly, the restaurant began to recognize their value. By the end of this period, the sisters had not only proven their capability, but had also gained the respect of the staff and the manager. They had gone from outsiders, rejected at the door, to trusted helpers who could handle the busiest shifts. Their journey had been filled with hard work, patience, and perseverance. They understood that opportunity does not always come immediately, but when it does, preparation and determination can turn it into success. This part of their story ends with the sisters standing at the threshold of greater possibilities. They had faced rejection, uncertainty, and exhaustion, but they had turned these challenges into stepping stones. Maria and Alina had earned a small but meaningful place in the restaurant, and their journey toward recognition and success was just beginning. Their hearts were full of hope, and their spirits were stronger than ever. They knew that the next challenge would be even bigger, but they were ready together to face whatever came their way. Maria and Alina had finally earned their first real opportunity in the restaurant, but this was only the beginning of their journey. Working inside the restaurant was far more challenging than they had imagined. The days were long, stretching from early morning until late at night. Their bodies ached from standing for hours on end, carrying heavy trays and moving quickly through the crowded kitchen. The heat from the stoves was relentless, and the noise of clattering pans, shouting chefs, and ringing bells made concentration difficult. Yet, despite the exhaustion, the sisters felt a sense of purpose that kept them moving forward. From the very first day, they realized that working in the kitchen required more than just skill. It demanded speed, precision, and teamwork. Each order had to be prepared perfectly and on time, or the entire flow of the restaurant would be disrupted. Maria took charge of chopping and preparing ingredients, while Alina focused on cooking and plating dishes. They communicated with each other in quiet whispers, coordinating their movements so that nothing slowed down the process. It was exhausting, but the sisters had learned to rely on one another, their bond stronger than ever. The staff inside the restaurant was not always welcoming. Some of the chefs and waiters were skeptical of the sisters, seeing them as outsiders who didn't belong in the bustling city kitchen. At first, their remarks were subtle, snide comments about their village background, laughter when the sisters made small mistakes, or dismissive gestures when they offered to help. Maria and Alina felt the sting of these moments, but they refused to let negativity shake their determination. "We are here to work, to learn, and to prove ourselves," Maria whispered to Alina one evening. Alina nodded, repeating the words as if to anchor herself in courage. The sisters quickly realized that their grandmother's recipes, though traditional, were not always enough to satisfy the busy restaurant customers. They needed to adapt, learn new techniques, and understand the tastes of city dwellers. They spent extra hours practicing after the kitchen closed, experimenting with flavors and observing how other chefs prepared dishes. Maria would carefully note the timing of each ingredient, while Elena experimented with spices and presentation. Every day brought new lessons, and every lesson brought them closer to mastery. One of the hardest challenges they faced was the pace of the restaurant. Orders could come in non-stop, sometimes hundreds in a single shift. It was easy to feel overwhelmed, especially when the staff was short-handed or when mistakes occurred. During one particularly busy evening, a large group of customers arrived unexpectedly. The kitchen was in chaos, pans were boiling over, sauces were spilling, and waiters were rushing from table to table. Maria and Elena stayed calm, relying on their training and teamwork. They divided tasks efficiently, Maria chopping and preparing ingredients while Elena cooked and plated dishes. Despite the pressure, they managed to serve every customer on time, their dishes praised for taste and presentation. That night they realized the value of composure under pressure. Over time, their dedication began to earn respect. The skeptical staff started noticing the sisters' hard work and determination. Some of the chefs who had doubted them began to offer advice, quietly guiding them on techniques and shortcuts. Waiters started trusting them to handle difficult orders and even complimented their speed and accuracy. Slowly, the sisters became an indispensable part of the restaurant, though they never let pride cloud their humility. They understood that recognition was earned, not demanded, and every day was an opportunity to prove themselves further. Even with growing respect, life in the restaurant was not easy. There were moments when exhaustion, mistakes, and criticism threatened to break their spirits. One evening, a dish was sent back by a customer because it was slightly overcooked. The chef who prepared it blamed the sisters for slowing down the process. Maria felt tears prick her eyes, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of their purpose. "Mistakes happen," she told Elena quietly. "We learn, we improve, and we move on. That's how we succeed." Elena held her sister's hand, drawing strength from her words, and together they corrected the mistake without complaint. The sisters also faced subtle prejudice from some colleagues who were uncomfortable with outsiders rising quickly in the restaurant. There were whispers about their village background, and occasionally, some staff members tried to undermine their efforts by giving them extra tasks or assigning them the hardest shifts. Maria and Elena refused to retaliate or argue. Instead, they focused on their work, letting their results speak for themselves. Their perseverance slowly earned them quiet admiration from even the most skeptical staff members. Despite these challenges, the sisters continued to innovate. They began experimenting with the family recipes in ways that suited the restaurant's clientele. They adjusted flavors, improved presentation, and even suggested new dishes inspired by their grandmother's cooking. Customers began to notice the unique touch in the food, the warmth, care, and creativity that came from someone who truly loved cooking. Word started spreading about the sisters who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, creating dishes that delighted the customers and made the restaurant special. Maria and Elena's hard work also taught them important lessons about teamwork and patience. They learned to support each other during the busiest moments, sharing tasks and encouraging one another. They learned to listen to criticism without taking it personally and to seek advice from experienced colleagues. They discovered that success was not just about talent, it was about resilience, humility, and the willingness to grow every single day. Each challenge they faced became a lesson, each difficulty a stepping stone toward mastery and respect. Over the months, the sisters' progress became impossible to ignore. The manager noticed how efficiently they worked, how calm they remained under pressure, and how the quality of their dishes improved consistently. He began to assign them more responsibility, trusting them with complex tasks, and allowing them to handle larger portions of the kitchen operations. Maria and Alina embraced these new responsibilities, understanding that with trust came the need for greater discipline and accountability. Outside the kitchen, their lives were still modest and simple. They shared a small, rented room near the restaurant, ate simple meals together, and saved every coin they could. Even though the city offered distractions, luxuries, and temptations, the sisters remained focused on their goal. Every coin saved, every hour worked, and every lesson learned brought them closer to the life they had dreamed of in their village. Their mother's words echoed in their hearts. Work hard, show your heart, and never give up. One day, a regular customer asked about the two young women who seemed to bring such care and dedication to every dish. The customer complimented the restaurant on the consistent quality and asked if the sisters had formal training. The manager, proud yet surprised, introduced Maria and Alina briefly, praising their hard work and talent. For the first time, the sisters realized that their dedication had a wider impact. They were not just helping the restaurant succeed, but also inspiring others with their story of perseverance and courage. By the end of this period, Maria and Alina had transformed from uncertain newcomers into respected, capable members of the restaurant staff. They had faced long hours, criticism, prejudice, and exhaustion, yet they had remained steadfast. Their bond as sisters had grown even stronger, their skills had improved immensely, and their confidence had blossomed. They were no longer just outsiders. They were professionals who had earned their place through sheer determination and unwavering effort. This part of their story closes with the sisters standing confidently in the kitchen, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of the restaurant. They had faced every challenge thrown at them, learned from every mistake, and proven themselves to the staff, the manager, and most importantly, to themselves. The journey had been hard, but every struggle had prepared them for even greater opportunities ahead. Maria and Alina knew that the next phase of their journey would bring new challenges, recognition, and perhaps the chance to truly shine. But they were ready. Together, as sisters, nothing seemed impossible. Months of hard work, dedication, and perseverance had finally brought Maria and Alina to a point where their efforts could no longer be overlooked. The restaurant, which had once been a place of skepticism and doubt for the sisters, had now become a stage for their talent and determination. Every dish they prepared, every table they served, and every challenge they faced had contributed to building a reputation that was slowly spreading beyond the restaurant walls. The manager, who had once doubted their abilities, began to rely on them for some of the most important tasks in the kitchen. He assigned them responsibilities that had previously been reserved for experienced chefs, trusting that the sisters could handle them. Maria and Alina accepted these tasks with humility and diligence, understanding that this trust was both a privilege and a responsibility. Their days were long, but the sense of purpose that drove them forward was stronger than any fatigue or hardship. The sisters' unique touch in the kitchen began to attract the attention of customers as well. Regular patrons noticed the care and creativity that went into every dish. Some commented on the consistency and flavor, wondering how two young women could manage so much with such skill and composure. Others admired the warmth and kindness that Maria and Alina brought to their service. The sisters had learned that cooking was not just about ingredients or techniques. It was also about love, attention, and passion. Every dish was an expression of their heart, and customers could feel it. One day, a food critic visited the restaurant unexpectedly. The sisters worked together seamlessly, preparing dishes with precision and attention to detail. The critic noticed the care in the presentation and the depth of flavor in every meal. After the meal, The critic asked the manager about the young women working in the kitchen. The manager proudly introduced Maria and Alina, explaining how they had come from a small village and earned their place through hard work and determination. The critic was impressed, and soon an article was published highlighting the sisters' journey from humble beginnings to key contributors in a respected restaurant. This recognition was not just a personal victory for Maria and Alina, it was also a symbol of hope for others. People from their village, friends they had made in the city, and even customers who had witnessed their dedication felt inspired by their story. The sisters' journey showed that with persistence, courage, and a willingness to learn, obstacles could be overcome. Maria and Alina had not only achieved their dream of working in a prestigious restaurant, but had also become role models for anyone striving to succeed against the odds. The sisters' lives gradually began to improve. With their steady income, they could afford a slightly better living space, more nutritious meals, and even small comforts that had seemed impossible when they first arrived in the city. Yet, despite these improvements, they remained humble. They continued to work tirelessly, always looking for ways to improve, learn, and help others. They understood that success was not a destination, but a journey, a series of steps that required constant effort and dedication. Their achievements also strengthened the bond between them. Maria and Alina had grown up relying on each other, but the challenges of the city and the restaurant had deepened their connection even further. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to communicate without words, and to support one another in moments of fatigue or frustration. This partnership was not just personal, it became a professional asset as well. Together, they could handle tasks that would have been impossible alone, and their teamwork became admired by the entire staff. Over time, the manager offered them a more permanent position with increased responsibility. Maria and Alina were now trusted not only to prepare dishes, but also to oversee portions of the kitchen, train new staff, and maintain the high standards of the restaurant. This trust was a recognition of their skill, dedication, and integrity. They had transformed from outsiders pleading for a chance into leaders respected by their colleagues and appreciated by their customers. But even as they achieved professional success, the sisters never forgot their roots. They often thought of their mother, who had worked tirelessly to raise them, and their grandmother, whose recipes had inspired their journey. They sent money back to their village to help their family, supported friends who were struggling, and even began teaching younger girls in the community some basic cooking skills. Maria and Alina realized that success was not only about personal gain, it was also about lifting others and sharing the lessons they had learned along the way. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Maria and Alina sat together in the quiet kitchen, reflecting on their journey. "Do you remember how scared we were when we first came here?" Alina asked softly. Maria smiled, her eyes reflecting pride and nostalgia. "Yes, but we never gave up. We kept moving forward step by step, even when it seemed impossible." They both laughed gently, thinking of the long days, the rejections, and the mistakes that had tested their courage. Each challenge, they realized, had been a stepping stone toward the life they had dreamed of. The sisters' story gradually spread outside the city as well. Local newspapers and social media began sharing their journey, highlighting how two young women from a small village had worked tirelessly to succeed in a big city restaurant. People admired their resilience, their humility, and the respect they had earned from others. Maria and Alina became a source of inspiration, showing that hard work, patience, and a kind heart could overcome the most difficult obstacles. Eventually, the restaurant itself flourished thanks to their contribution. The dishes they helped create became popular, new customers arrived regularly, and the establishment earned a reputation for quality and consistency. Maria and Alina's dedication had not only changed their lives, but had also made a lasting impact on the business. The manager often praised them publicly, ensuring that the staff and customers alike recognized their hard work and talent. As recognition grew, the sisters also received invitations to participate in culinary workshops and local events. They began teaching others, sharing their skills and experiences with those who aspired to enter the culinary world. Maria and Alina were careful to emphasize the lessons that had been most valuable to them: perseverance, humility, teamwork, and the importance of learning from every challenge. They wanted others to know that success was not instant, it was earned, one day at a time. Through all of this, Maria and Alina remained grounded. They continued to wake up early, prepare ingredients, and work tirelessly in the kitchen. They understood that their journey was ongoing and that there were always new skills to learn, new challenges to face, and new opportunities to grow. They never let fame or recognition distract them from the values that had carried them this far: hard work, dedication, and the unbreakable bond between sisters. By the time the sisters had been working in the restaurant for several years, they had achieved what once seemed impossible. They were respected, admired, and financially stable. Yet more importantly, they had proven to themselves and the world that courage, determination, and persistence could break barriers. They had transformed from uncertain young girls pleading for a chance into confident women who had earned their place through skill, hard work, and integrity. The story of Maria and Alina, the Apache sisters, became a symbol of hope and inspiration. They had faced rejection, skepticism, and hardship, yet they never gave up. They had relied on each other, learned from every challenge, and worked tirelessly to achieve their dreams. Their journey showed that no matter where one starts in life, with determination and heart, extraordinary success is possible. As they stood together one evening in the quiet of the now familiar kitchen, Maria looked at Alina and said, "We've come so far." Alina smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, and we did it together. Nothing can ever take that away from us." They held hands and looked around the kitchen, remembering the long hours, the challenges, and the triumphs. The journey had been hard, but it had made them stronger, wiser, and more resilient than they had ever imagined. Their story ended not just with personal success, but with a lasting impact on others. The sisters had proven that doors could be opened through persistence, that skills honed with care could be recognized, and that determination paired with humility could inspire everyone around them. Maria and Alina had become not just skilled chefs, but role models, symbols of courage, and examples of what it meant to fight for one's dreams. The Apache sisters had arrived in the city pleading for a chance. "We'll work, we'll cook, we'll serve, just let us in." And now they had not only been let in but had become indispensable, admired, and respected. Their journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of family, and the strength that comes from refusing to give up, no matter the odds. Their dreams had been realized, but more importantly, they had created a story that would continue to inspire others for years to come.